Good day, my friends, and welcome to my August 19th to 22nd Lake Louise to Jasper Loop Ride, Part 3. Well, waking up at the apple tree in Radium, I had a chance to see outside the balcony and light. When I booked, Shannon said she'd put us by the hot tub. We didn't have a chance to use it. It closed up at 11. I hear there's banging outside, grab my camera, and there's a bighorn ram up front, close and personal. He looks at me thinking, "What are you looking at, dude?" I'm thinking, I want to see you get an apple. And sure enough, he did. He gave it a few more shots with no luck. He's thinking there's another apple tree at the Apple Tree Inn and walked away. It was bloody amazing to see here in town. There were a couple more rams across the street. The grayish ram here was just absolutely gorgeous and alert. Bighorns range in color from light brown to grayish, or a dark chocolate brown. A white rump and white on the backs of all four legs. Rocky Mountain bighorn ram's horns can weigh up to 30 pounds, more than all the bones in his body combined. Females, called ewes, also have horns, but smaller, like the herd we saw just before Stag Leap Provincial Park in Part 2. Bighorns range from Canada and south to New Mexico, but northern Canadian rams are the largest. Their average weight is around 300 pounds, but have been recorded up to 500. Bighorn sheep are relatives of goats. Don't get them confused with the Rocky Mountain goat. Mountain goats have long black horns, woolly white double coats, and have beards. Typically, they live at higher altitudes, range up into Alaska. Mountain goats can withstand higher winds up to 100 miles an hour and temperatures down to minus 50. With the bighorns moseying on, it was time for us to do the same. Brian checking his oil and retightening the muffler from the ditch thing. All was good to go. We headed down to the main drag searching for a specialty coffee shop, mocha or something to that nature, maybe a small snack. A real breakfast wasn't in the cards for us at this time. We found one called the Coffee House, pulled a Huey, parked, and went in. A nice little place, busier than it looked, good coffee, good snacks, good service, all we needed. After fueling up at the Husky, which is right on the corner of Highway 95 and 93, we head up 93 traveling along the Kootenay Highway, also known as the Banff-Windermere Highway. It's only a few kilometers till we hit Kootenay National Park entrance and toll booth. It costs $9.80 per bike passing through the national parks, at least the ones here in BC/Alberta. This year, coming up in 2017, all parks are free of fee, celebrating Canada's 150th year anniversary. Just out of the gate from the toll, you'll come up and ride through Sinclair Canyon. Sinclair Canyon is a really cool, narrow passage, but what would have been cooler was stopping in. There's a pullout where you can view Sinclair Creek and Sinclair Falls. You cannot see it riding the highway. There's a highway sidewalk and also a lookout point that branches away for better viewing. Trails down to the creek and little caves. I kicked myself in the butt for not stopping. I will remember it for next time. Soon after Sinclair Canyon is Radium Hot Springs. The springs, going back in time, was used by the First Nations as a spiritual place and place of healing. In 1841, Sir George Simpson, the governor of the Hudson's Bay Company, visited the springs, bathed in a pool just big enough for one person. James Sinclair also followed this route on his way to Oregon with a group of Red River settlers. By the late 1800s, the Columbia Valley saw its first permanent settlers with more people using the springs. In 1890, an Englishman named Roland Stewart bought the springs for $160 and was the first registered owner. By 1914, Roland constructed a concrete bathing pool, log bathhouse, small store, and caretaker home. In 1922, with the newly formed Kootenay National Park, the springs was expropriated to be included as part of the national park. This was 11 years after discovering traces of radium in the springs. Since then, the springs have gone through many facelifts, expansion, facilities for folks enjoying hot and cold plunges. In 2010, the Olympic torch relay passed through in celebrating the Winter Games in Vancouver. This is a great entrance into and through the Kootenay Valley. Just 15 kilometers from the hot springs is the Kootenay Valley viewpoint with the Kootenay River running below. You'll see many peaks of Mitchell and Vermilion mountain ranges that seem to go on forever, and definitely a small part of our Great Continental Divide. Although viewing south was great, the glare from the sun on the cameras didn't do them any favors. The GoPro wasn't too bad. Should we got that friggin' sun?
I got a picture of you taking pictures of
Oh. Here, got a picture? There we go. Smile, say cheese.
Fuck you.
He almost said cheese. In leaving the spectacular view, we head downhill alongside Mount Kindersley, heading into the lower valley along the Kootenay River. As mentioned in Part 2, the Kootenay River runs into the Columbia River at Castlegar. From here, the Vermilion and Kootenay crossing area is about 440 kilometers behind us by road. Along here, you'll see a sign saying Simpson. It's the Simpson Trail. It's also called the Kootenay Crossing. There's a footbridge crossing over the river if you want another pit stop and stroll. Up a bit is Vermilion Crossing and the Kootenay Park Lodge. They have rustic log cabins with fireplaces, dining, and a general store. It's in the center of the park and the only development between Radium and Lake Louise / Banff. This whole area in Kootenay Park was hit with 5 strikes of Mother Nature's lightning on July 31st, 2003. It became one of the largest wildfires in the Canadian Rockies, burning 17,000 hectares. In acres, that's around 42,000. Firefighters had to ignite backfires 15 kilometers ahead of the main fire, traveling towards Bow River Valley, Lake Louise, and Banff. The backfires worked and ultimately saved the Bow Valley and the 2 towns. We're pulling into Numa Falls in the Vermilion Pass mountain range and still in the Kootenay National Park. This is the Vermilion River no matter what's on Google Maps. It's the largest confluence to the Kootenay River where they meet at Kootenay Crossing. Numa Falls is not a big falls but cool to see and hear up close. Last year the little bridge over the middle of the falls washed out, closing Numa Creek Trail. They cordoned around with a chain link fence, however the water was low enough to get around for a little sneak peek. We stayed about 40 minutes and was all that was needed. Carrying on, we passed by a couple points of interest before crossing the BC-Alberta border. Paint Pots Park, for one. There are 3 main paint pots in the park, which are small natural cold water spring pools. They have a high content of iron, lead, magnesium, and zinc within the pots. The mineral pools create bubbles through the earth, and the iron ore stains the soil, giving them that deep orange color. As the iron level builds up around the edges, their height increases with time. The pot's water flow into the Vermilion River, where the high content of minerals get diluted with no harm. Another point of interest one should see up a bit from the paint pots is Marble Canyon, an area still in a landscape shaped by fire. They say when Mother Nature takes its course, it's good for the ecosystem. Marble Canyon is a rare formation in BC. The name comes from the brilliant limestone of its walls. It's one of the most colorful canyons in the Kootenay National Park. The bedrock is microcrystalline limestone, meaning sedimentary, rather than marble, a metamorphic rock. The Marble Canyon Trail is about 1.5 kilometers round trip and can be done in about 45 minutes. You will want more time to read the many signs along the trail describing how the canyon was carved over time. Take pictures and mingle. The falls at the end of the trail is part of Tokum Creek. It pushes its way through the narrow gorges the creek created. Marble Canyon is another must-see stop if planning on touring this route. Here we're looking back at the last view we see of Kootenay National Park, crossing over the BC-Alberta border into Banff National Park, and at the same time riding across our Great Continental Divide. I asked a few folks what a Continental Divide was. They said earthquake zones. Wrong. That's a fault. Continental divides, and there's 6 of them in North America, ours called Great Divide, runs from Alaska to the bottom of Mexico. It's nature's way to drain the melting glaciers and snowpacks via rivers into our oceans from different sides of the same mountain range. A small example being the east side of our Great Divide draining into the Atlantic Ocean, and the west side draining into the Pacific. There's more to it, but I'm not doing a thesis. The first mountain we see here is Castle Mountain, and about 3 kilometers away from Castle Junction. This junction is where the Windermere Highway, Highway 93, ends and intersects with Highway 1, Trans-Canada. Also, the Bow Valley Parkway, 1A, running parallel to the Highway 1. Mentioning Highway 1A, and in hindsight, I will take this route to Lake Louise rather than the Trans-Canada next time. As mentioned, running parallel, but along the other side of the Bow River. The Bow River source is from the Bow Glacier, part of the Watka Icefield. Runs through southern Alberta where it meets the Old Man River. The two rivers form the South Saskatchewan River. The South Saskatchewan River becomes the mouth of the Nelson River, running through Manitoba. It forms many lakes like Lake Winnipeg for one, before exiting into Hudson Bay. Another example of rivers draining from our Great Continental Divide. It's only 29 kilometers, 20 minutes from Castle Junction to Lake Louise via Trans-Canada. Add about 8 minutes via Bow Valley Parkway. It didn't seem to be all that busy, passed by the little village, and we'll return here for lunch and gas a little later. It's something like 4 kilometers from the village to the resort and lake. The ride up is gorgeous, with long sweeping turns and apex views of the mountains Fairview, St. Piran, and Devil's Thumb. Nearing the top, just before Deer Lodge and Fairmont Chateau, was a bit of a clutch and crawl scenario with hordes of folks finding parking. After all, it is Touristo season, and about to find out just how much. Finally getting up to the main parking lot, it was full. Being on bikes, we would have found a spot. But this nice little French flag girl let us park on the yellow stripes alongside the main strip. Walking up to the lake, you sort of pass by the Fairmont Chateau. Along with gazebos, flower gardens, and little grass parks one can mingle in. Time to stroll to the lake called Lake Louise, reading signs along the way about the history, trails, and landscape. It was crowded, but fairly easy to get some photos without too many folks in the way. But you could sure hear them. Except for the French flag girl with broken English, I never heard a word of English while I was there. Can you?
Oh, because you need the penny. You need penny. Oh, no.
I really thought for a moment I was in another country. Hee. Lake Louise is fed by the Victoria Glacier of Mount Victoria. It actually lies on the border between Alberta and British Columbia in the Bow Range. As many glacial lakes and rivers, the water looks a turquoise blue or green. The color is caused by the grinding of a glacier movement that creates what is called glacial rock flour. Rock flour is very light and stays suspended for a long time. The sunlight that refracts off the rock flour is what gives it its color. On a rainy, cloudy day, the water looks dark. Heading down from Lake Louise was a bit quicker, still hordes of cars and buses coming up. Grabbing a better glimpse of Deer Lodge, the Paradise Bungalows, winding down the sweeping mountain road to the village was cool. It was time to have lunch, grab a few supplies, and gas up. Entering the village, attempting to pull into the Husky for fuel, it was a tad busy, so we U-turned into the Petrochem. After fueling, we crossed over into the little village strip mall called the Sampson Mall. Pretty much anything we needed was here. Of course, a liquor store, and decided to pick up our tonight's beverages now. They also had a mountain sports, native gallery, bakery, delicatessen, cafe, farmer's market, plus some, and the village bar and grill where we went to have lunch. What I needed to find in a panic mode was microchips for my GoPro, and I'll be damned if I didn't find some at the village market. After spending about an hour and a half at the mall, it was time to trundle on to the main feature, the Icefields Parkway, Highway 93 from Lake Louise to Jasper. I will end Part 3 entering the Parkway toll booth, a few scenic pics to which Part 4 has to offer, and ending this little mini-series.